Dortmund. Will we see a late breakthrough to get a deal done? Let's get to Stamford Bridge now. Our reporter James Savundra is there. James, I said they were running out of time in the last hour. They're really running out of time now. Any chance of getting Gittens over the line?
Yeah, Mike, I think it's going to be a bit too short time left for Chelsea in this transfer window. There were hopes this morning they could make two signings in the form of Mike Maignan and Jamie Gittens, but it looks like time has run out. Earlier on this afternoon, we brought you the news that Chelsea had lodged a bid around £42 million with Borussia Dortmund. The clubs have remained in talks over the course of the last few days. They remained in talks today, Dortmund not budging from their valuation of the player, which we understand to be around £55 million. Chelsea have a long-standing interest in Jamie Gittens, but they wanted to remain disciplined. They didn't want to overpay just to get him in time for the Club World Cup. There was a need to get a left winger in, ideally for the Club World Cup, because Jadon Sancho, he's gone back to Manchester United. Mykhailo Mudryk, he's suspended right now. Raheem Sterling isn't in the first team picture, so they were looking to bring in Jamie Gittens early in this window, but they didn't want to overpay for him, and it's definitely something you can see them revisiting once the transfer window opens again, once again on the 16th of June. But it does look like Jamie Gittens will be at the Club World Cup, but we're wearing the yellow of Borussia Dortmund as things stand.
James Savundra, live from Stamford Bridge. Right, from Stamford Bridge, we are going straight first. Gittens, what's your understanding of where the deal is?
I think the deal is almost certainly off now. The last bit of information we had was sort of guiding us very much towards the next transfer window, which incredibly reopens on Monday. So the information we were getting is Jamie Gittens is a long-term target. We don't have to sign him this evening. We can sign him next week if we want. We know that Borussia Dortmund want to sell the player. Why should we overpay for a player who is up for sale and for a player who wants to move to Chelsea? The main transfer window is open until the end of August. OK, the Club World Cup is important, but Chelsea don't have to break the bank to get in a player who may be a squad player to begin with, just for the group stages of the Club World Cup. Our colleagues in Germany, actually, are just reporting in the last few minutes that apparently Jamie Gittens himself is not very happy with what has transpired today. I think we've been seeing some pictures of him training with Borussia Dortmund.
Well, training on his own.
Yeah, to me it looked like, perhaps Dean knows more than I do, but those pictures look like he was training on his own. And our colleagues at Germany are saying that he has just sped off at very high speed, looking very disappointed. I don't know how you can tell through the tinted windows of the kind of cars that footballers drive these days. But the reports are that he's now left the training ground, and it looks like he is not particularly happy with what has happened today.
Carve, you were mentioning the other day about, I think there are about 3 different windows, but there's also a registration period in the middle of the Club World Cup where players can join for the second half of that tournament, but they can't play for 2 different teams in the same tournament. I've got that right, yeah?
Yeah, so what happens is the window closes at 7 o'clock tonight, but then the window opens next Monday. But if you sign a player next Monday, that is too late for him to play for you in the group stages of the Club World Cup. But there is a registration period opening in the Club World Cup after the group stages from the 27th of June to the 3rd of July. So technically Chelsea could sign Gittens next week. He couldn't play for them in the group stages. Then they could wait until the 27th of June when the registration period for the Club World Cup opens, register him for the Club World Cup, then he could play for them in the knockout stages of the Club World Cup. But if Borussia Dortmund decide he's a Dortmund player and he plays for Dortmund in the group stages of the Club World Cup, then he wouldn't be able to play for Chelsea because you can't play for more than one club in the Club World Cup.
So is it in Dortmund's interest, if these talks are going to continue between the 2 clubs, to maybe, if they're going to take Gittens to the Club World Cup, take him but not play him?
Exactly. If they think that Chelsea really want to sign him in the next couple of weeks and Chelsea really want him to play for them in the Club World Cup, it would be in Dortmund's interest not to have him registered or not have him play for them in the Club World Cup, because then he would be perhaps a little less attractive for Chelsea. But I think we're getting little bit carried away with the importance of the Club World Cup. Let's wait and see how big a tournament it turns out to be, because a couple of weeks ago we were talking about the fact that FIFA shouldn't be holding the Club World Cup. Players were knackered. What were we doing, having another tournament in a already congested fixture calendar? Whereas now we're talking about possible transfers and players being left out of squads so they could move to another club. We're doing exactly what FIFA want us to do, which is to talk up the Club World Cup.
But what we're not talking about is the player himself. He's 20 years old. This could be a dream move for him. What he's being told probably is that this could happen and could have happened today. Therefore, he might be training on his own, ready to just keep fit but go at a moment's notice. And then maybe that would have been pulled back. You're an asset as a player. That's what you are to a business. And he'll just sit there now and think, well, what's happened? Am I going to play for Dortmund now in the Club World Cup? Am I going to end up playing for Chelsea? Where's my mindset now? Have I got to be super professional and make sure now I just come in and continue, but I've got this in the back of my mind? It is difficult when you're 20 to try and compute all of that and then try and act in the right way, which is probably why he's got in his car and just gone.
It's interesting that, because when you say you're just an asset to a club, is that experience telling you that? Because when you were 20, did you feel valued? And then, like Gittens, you probably feel not so valued at the moment.
Of course, because ultimately neither club, it's not about the interest of the player. They're not thinking, I wonder what Jamie Gittens really wants in all of this. They don't. It's a business transaction. Dortmund want to get the most money at the right time. Chelsea want to spend as little as possible on the player at the right time, and then it's about the player once those things are met. Of course, you can have an influence as a player as much as you can, but it's difficult when you're that young.
I think this will become clearer in the next couple of hours, because Dortmund should release their squad for the Club World Cup, so we'll be able to find out whether Jamie Gittens is in their squad. I think if he is, he'd be flying to New York. Their first game, I think, is next Tuesday in New Jersey. And also, I'm very interested in this media briefing that the sporting director of Borussia Dortmund is supposed to be holding this evening. He's going to be speaking to the German journalists, and hopefully, of course, I'm sure they will ask him about what's happened with Jamie Gittens and Chelsea today.
We also heard from our reporter. Do you think, given their goalkeeping problems, they'll walk back into that deal at some stage?
They really should. I mean, he'd be an absolute game changer for them. If we're talking about Chelsea being genuinely competitive at the top of the Premier League next season, making some sort of dent in the Champions League, we know there's a lot of talent there, although not in the goalkeeping department, I think it's fair to say, where there's numbers more than there is talent. Now, Maignan is not only someone who would be a massive step up in terms of quality, in terms of what they've got goalkeeping-wise, because he's one of the very best goalkeepers in the world. But in terms of experience, because we know he'd be the oldest player, 29 going on 30, going into that Chelsea team, he's a real leader as well. And he has been since day one with France and with Milan. And he's had to be, because he came up a difficult way, came through the PSG academy and they rejected him, which I suspect they regret. Did really well at Lille. Then when he went to Milan, similarly, Scudetto winner, did well in the Champions League. And I think is what he's done with France that's really the key. You think of what Chelsea are missing in terms of leadership to take them to that next level on the pitch, to traverse those difficult periods. And there were definitely periods where it looked like they were going to miss the Champions League for all the good things that they'd done under Maresca last season. Maignan is the guy who stands up in the France dressing room and says to Mbappe or says to Griezmann when he was still playing, that's not good enough. What are you going to do better? Not every player would do that. And I think to have someone who doesn't talk all the time, but when he speaks, people listen, that would be another enormously valuable asset for Chelsea.
Massively. I like the phrase you used earlier, outside the tent. So give us those players who are outside the tent in this window, the ones who maybe haven't had that much of a mention, who may get a move.
Well, look, I think we started with Milan there when we're talking about Mike Maignan. Very, very difficult season for them last time around. They'll be looking to create some collateral. So I think you're looking at Rafael Leao, who we know can be one of the best players on the world in his day. Drove not one but two Portuguese coaches mad on the way out of the San Siro last season. I think a move for him is really, really important. Milan are going to have to come down from his 175 million euro. That's right, 175 million euro release clause if they're to move him on. He's just not consistent enough. Same for Theo Hernandez, one of their other high earners. It looks like he could be on the move back to Atletico Madrid, which would be an interesting little circle for them. And, I think a lot of people will be looking at Milan and thinking, what can we do with a couple of those players? I think elsewhere, we have to look at if it really falls apart post Xabi Alonso at Leverkusen. And now we're talking about a lot of teams at the moment are looking for a left back. Why not Alex Grimaldo? He's been one of the best left backs, wing backs in Europe over the last couple of seasons. And I think given that he really had that emotional connection with Xabi Alonso, them both being Spanish and really him reviving his career when no one really wanted him when he was on the way out from Benfica, it feels to me like it might be the time for Grimaldo to move on. Someone's got to have a punt for him. He's just so gifted on the ball, brilliant set piece taker, can work in a 4 or a 5. Go get him someone.
Have they had a real change in strategy? Because Carve said earlier they're really relaxed in this window. That doesn't, relaxed and Chelsea in transfer windows doesn't seem to go together.
No, I mean, last summer was so chaotic. I thought Maresca handled it brilliantly because he had to make some big decisions and leave some big names out of that playing squad. And then the club had to decide what to do with those players. There's probably still that follow-on even this summer, but it looks like they've maybe got things in order, and they've got a young, exciting squad. And we talked about Mike Maignan there. Maybe that bit of experience now that they can drop in for Maresca to help those young players develop even more. I actually thought he overachieved this season with what he did, with the start that they made in that transfer and what he had to do to then get to the end season with what they have. I thought he overachieved.
Carvo, you know Chelsea well. What do you make of the way they're going about their business in this window?
I think it's easy to be carried away. Sometimes when you read a lot and follow social media, and there's obviously lots of developments about Chelsea could be signing France #1 goalkeeper Mike Maignan, you get sort of whipped up in a frenzy and you want it to happen. The same with Jamie Gittens. You're like, Jamie Gittens, it's talks, bids. The bid's been made, it's rejected, there's interest, there's that. And you get whipped up into a frenzy and you want the deal to happen. But sometimes you've just got to take a step back and say, OK, is Mike Maignan really that good at the moment? What's been happening to him at AC Milan? And what's his injury record like? Has he been making a lot of mistakes? Jamie Gittens, OK, he's a good player, but is he worth £50 million? Why has he been dropped by Dortmund? Why has he only scored 1 goal this year? These are all the kinds of discussions that clubs are having, and they're not just going to be swayed by what's trending on social media. I know we're part of that as well. There's an enormous amount of interest in transfers, but just because a transfer has been talked about doesn't mean a club is going to actually do that deal.
What do you think, Dharmesh? Do you think Chelsea need to do more business, and the way their business has changed over this window, maybe?
I think not too long ago, when Chelsea were embarking on a particular transfer window, it was almost looked like the cynics were out, weren't they, when they were saying, why are they handing these guys 7-year contracts? And now it seems, after the season they've had, maybe we should be praising Chelsea for the way they've handled it.
Maybe we them yet. Will they feel like they failed because they haven't got deals that they wanted to get over?
I can't believe this. Chelsea get criticised when they sign too many players, and now you're having a go. You're having a go at them for not signing any players.
Well, what do you think?
I think they did really well because they signed Liam Delap.
Yeah.
Lots of other clubs wanted to sign him. That was the priority, and I think he ticks a lot of boxes for them because he's young, he's developing, he fits into the wage structure. It was only £30 million. They may sign another striker as well. But I think that was the priority this window, and that is the one they're most delighted about. So much so that they want him to play in the Club World Cup for them instead of playing in the under-21 Euros, and he was happy to do that.
Well, let's ask our striker. What do you think of him?
I think they'll be frustrated though with obviously Jadon Sancho and Mudryk not available, to not maybe have got, if they are interested, of course, to not have got that done before the Club World Cup, because again, who is going to play that role? Will it be Neto on the left, or Palmer, or whoever they decide to play on that side, Madueke, all more suited to the right hand side? So there'll be a bit of frustration, surely.
Do you think Liam Delap made the right decision? Because we were being told that he was really torn about whether to go to Manchester United or go to Chelsea or go to Newcastle. He had so many options. It was a really, really difficult decision for him. Do you think it's the right decision?
I mean, obviously only time will tell. I think he will have looked at Nicholas Jackson and thought, I think I can take you on and be better than you. And that's what you've got to think. You've got to have that inner confidence. If you're going to a club like Chelsea, where there is going to be competition, you have to look at that and think, I'm going to get in ahead of you. And he'll probably feel that, and that'll be a nice tussle now to see who starts under Maresca in that position.
Have you been impressed with him when you've seen him?
I have, yeah. I mean, I think there's so much more development from Liam Delap. But in a struggling side, I think he showed enough to say there's a real, genuine top-level player there. I think it's too early to know if it's going to really work yet at Chelsea, because I think there's so much more he needs to develop. And it's so different playing in a team that struggles with a team that has plenty of the ball. He's suddenly going to have to be very, very patient when Chelsea keep possession.
In a perverse way, is it sometimes, for a player like Delap, easier to play in a struggling side? Because it seemed like everything went through him and he was the main man. And he's not going to be that main man at a bigger club.
Yeah, it's a great point, because you're right. Everything is fed towards getting the best out of him, because they're reliant on him to get the goals to keep them in the Premier League. Chelsea won't look at it in that way. It's more patterns of play, getting the likes of Cole Palmer on the ball. I think that's the thing that impresses me the most about Erling Haaland, is his discipline and patience. To not be involved at all for passages of play after passages of play, making runs and not getting the ball. That really takes a strong mentality to be that player. And that's something that he's going to have to develop, because he won't be used to that, I'm sure.
Yeah. Well, the window's closed, but